Hey, Pastor Ray Barnett here with you. Glad that you could be with me here on the Oasis. And as always, I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Well, just got dumped on a little bit here by a pretty heavy shower, but now the sun's back out again. And it is fall, and it is a very, very beautiful time of year. Today, I want to talk to you about knowing your limitations. Some of you may remember or know that one of Clint Eastwood's classic lines in one of his movies, a man ought to know his limitations. But that's really good advice for you. You have to know your limitations. For example, particularly with anxiety, nervousness, the panic and all that. There are a lot of you that have a tendency to be the dynamo, I know people like this, so I'm not just making this up or just theorizing. I watch people. Give you an example. Maybe you're at a some kind of an event, and it crosses your mind that people are in confusion. Somebody's got to take over, and that's you. You just jump right in, start taking over things or giving directions or whatever the case may be. And before you know it, you're experiencing all types of symptoms. Another scenario would be you got 6 things to do today, and you got a time schedule to do it. So you're going to rush into 2 things, trying to do 2 and 3 things all at once, or just simply always looking at your watch. See, oh boy, I'm running out of time. I still got to do this and I still got to do that. And what's happening is you're building up tension in the muscles, tension in the body. The nervous system is under pressure, and you develop symptoms. Now, these 2 examples illustrate that you don't know your limitations. I want to casually say, in some instances, you may not know your place. I'll give you another example of that. I think it's pretty routine as parents. Now my wife and I have 5 children. We have 13 grandchildren. And I think as a parent, it's just normal, average at least, that you always feel like they need your advice, or not only need your advice, but they want your advice. Well, certainly when they're little, they definitely need your advice. They need your help, your guidance. As they get older, they may or may not need it, and they may or may not want it. But again, I know of parents that no matter how old their children are, meaning their children could be in like their 60s, they're still always, and I don't mean just being polite advice. I'm talking about really overly involved with their kids, overly involved with the grandchildren. What happens? You start to develop symptoms again. Could be any number of things. Psychological, physiological, both. Example, again, not knowing your limitations. And again, I say it casually, not really knowing your place. Your kids may be polite enough to not, I'm talking about grown kids, and you're older. Your grown kids may not be inclined to tell you, hey, I really don't want your advice. And so they just absorb it. But it's almost a guarantee that when you're not around them, they're probably saying, oh, my mother, my father, Well, okay, so that's excusable, but what I'm trying to point out is that you have to know your limitations, and then I'll add with that, you have to know your place. Because it's very common with nervous symptoms for people to overdo things. With depression, we always have these opposites. With depression, it's just a major effort to do anything. So that's not usually associated with depression, like knowing your limitations. But with anxiety and panic and nervousness and all these things, there is a propensity on the part of some of you to not really know where is your limitation. Where does this really end? I mean, where I've gone right to the hilt, can't go any further. And then once you cross that line, and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, there you go. Symptoms develop. You're fatigued, you're tired, your throat is tightening, your chest is tight. You know, again, it could be any number of symptoms because you're not in touch with your limitations. And we all have different levels of, you know, how much can we put up with or how much can we do. But this is where the Greeks come in when they use the phrase "know thyself." Now this is kind of a project really for so many of you because you're not in touch with yourself. You don't know your limitations. So some of you don't know your gifts and talents. I mean, there's certain things that I'm very, very good at. And there's certain things that I'm not good at all. And it's the same for you. So why am I going to waste time not knowing my limitation on a certain type of project where I'm just not gifted or talented, or I'm just not interested in some cases? So you see what I'm saying, that it's important to know yourself, and in particular the theme today is to know your limitations. Now, how do you go about doing that? Well, I would think common sense would begin to dictate. If you just look back in your history and you see, here, let me give you one more example. Raising the perfect child. Well, we all want to be good parents. I don't know that if in my head I ever thought to myself I'd raise a perfect kid. Perfect, but if I did entertain that thought, I'd failed miserably. Why? Because my 5 kids are sinners, just like their father and their mother and the rest of the world all have sin. But you know, there could be an area of perfectionism in raising your child, you know. Again, I'm not saying don't do your best. I'm just saying that know your limitations. Know that, let me say one more thing. For parents who really, really care about doing a good job, you have to be satisfied at the end of it when your children move out, if they ever move out. You have to kind of know at the end of it all that you did your best, and that's all that you could do. I've always tried to do my best at anything I do. And once I know that I gave it my best shot, I relax with that, and you should too. So whether it's your children, or it's the house, or your job, of course you want to perform well. But everything has limitations. And in the area of employment, you know, there's going to be some times when your boss is going to put demands on you that are just not realistic. And again, I know a bunch of people, I mean, personally know these people, and I watch how the management abuses them because they're very good workers. One in particular, I was always counseling him, saying, man, you know, you either got to get another job or speak up, but he hasn't so far. And they just abuse him. But see, he does suffer from depression, but he doesn't suffer from the nervous symptoms that you get. So he could just kind of roll with it and keeps on going. I could never do what he does. He gets really abused at work. So it's not important somebody else knows your limitations. Certainly not important that I know your limitations. It's important that you know your limitations when you're able to say, you know what, enough is enough. I've gone far enough. And let me add this as I finish. It's a real relief to know that I've gone as far as I can. It hasn't turned out the way I hoped it would. Maybe in the future it will. There's nothing I can do about that other than pray and put it in God's hands, which is certainly where we should start. And then from that point on, to rest in the fact that you did all that you could. You came right to the top of your limitation, and now you got to let it go. I find great relief in that when I know I've done my best, and there's nothing else that I can do, nothing else that I should do, and then I make up my mind that there's nothing else I will do. I'm all done. So if you want to spare yourself from producing symptoms, know your limitations, study yourself, think through your history. What have you overdone? And stop overdoing it. So do, just don't overdo. That's my exhortation to you today. Know your limitations, whatever they may be. I have one more thing. I'm a pastor, I give counsel. That's what I'm doing on this broadcast. I've had many cases where I've taken it as far as I could take it, and this situation is still not solved. I have to let it go. Doesn't mean I don't love the person. It certainly doesn't mean I won't pray for the person, and on and on. But I've done all I can do. I've hit my limit, and I have to let it go. So, just an example. All right? Study yourself. Think about your history. Think about what you're doing. Don't be a human dynamo. Stop trying to achieve, stuff that's not helpful and also not healthy. So let me pray for you today. God would help you. I pray as always for my friends and ask them to help them to know their limitations. Help them to know where this enough has been enough. Wherever it may be, their marriage, their family, their job, church, ministry, whatever. Help them to know they've hit their limitations and not push beyond that, because once they do, God, they're going to develop nervous symptoms and then they're going to suffer. So I ask for you to help them today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Weather looks good for the next week or so. So, God will not be here with you. As always, I give invitation for those of you who are not subscribed to the channel to subscribe, and also hit the notification button. Thumbs up wouldn't hurt, and we'll be good. Be good to go. All right. Always remember, let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. Because without that, everything's really gonna fall apart. All right, God bless. Let that peace of God, that peace of Christ rule in your heart. And Lord willing, I'll see you here again tomorrow on the Oasis. God bless.